Hey guys, over the last couple of days I did a game jam. It was a 3-day game jam. It was Banana Jam hosted by some random dude. There were about 30 people who did it, and I made a game. I just wanted to take a break from like serious game development and do something a little bit fun, something that I could get done in a couple of days. And I ended up finishing. I'm going to actually do a playthrough of it and talk about a lot of things that went into making the game and why I made some decisions I did. But I'm going to go ahead and play it right now. If you haven't played it yet and you want to, there are some surprises, so there will be spoilers, obviously, because I'm going to play through the whole thing. I'll put a link in the description if you want to pause it and play through it and then come back and watch it. You can. If not, doesn't matter. You'll probably get a very similar experience if you watch this video. Okay, so here we go. This is Super Banana Quest 64. Like I said earlier, I made it for a 3-day game jam. It was called Banana Jam. The theme was bananas, and the rules were basically don't make anything from scratch, but I took that as make everything from scratch. So don't use any game you've built before or, stuff like that. Apparently the creator was like, no, you can't use any assets or anything like that either, which I didn't know until later, but it doesn't really matter. It's not like it was being judged or there were no prizes or anything. I did it as a learning experience. I wanted to do some kind of third-person platformer. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the design and stuff that went into it. Okay, anyway, so the first thing that I originally had a cylinder here jumping around, but I decided to change it eventually when I figured that a big part of the charm in platformers was the character that you moved around. Unfortunately, because it was such a small amount of time, it was over 3 days, and I basically woke up, I worked my actual job until around 6 o'clock, and then I switched over to the game and worked on it until around 3 or 4 in the morning for 3 days straight, and it was pretty rough. So realistically, I probably put in about 16 to 18 hours into this game. But eventually I got this character working. One thing that I learned was that the third-person controller that ships with Unity is kind of crap, and a lot of people say it's crap for the wrong reasons. It's fine for when you want to use a humanoid. Like, this is a humanoid model. It's rigged, which means that you can realistically move around the limbs, and the other limbs will respond as well because they're all connected. And then you've got motion captured animations, like this walk is obviously motion captured. You can't really create something like that. That looks that good by hand. It would take a long time. So you can basically grab thousands of animations that were mocapped and released for free. But Unity's third-person controller that ships with Unity is only basically for humanoids because Unity's mechanism system applies root motion, which is basically, instead of using any kind of built-in physics or moving the position of the character manually and like simulating gravity and all that, what it does is to move forward, the animation itself moves the character forward. And if you do a roll or anything like that, the animation moves the character forward again, which, in my opinion, sucks for a like banjo-kazooie type platformer, or Donkey Kong Country 64, or Donkey Kong 64. Is that what it's called? Whatever. Yeah, so anyway, I switched it out. I grabbed a controller from GitHub. I don't remember who created it, but it was like a super character controller. And yeah, it works, but it's super buggy. I don't recommend it. Next time I'll probably write my own or heavily modify the Unity one. And as you can see, even the camera is broken too, which is also the one that ships with Unity. So there's a lot of problems with Unity. I'm actually considering trying out Unreal for the next game jam I do, which will be a game by its cover in a couple of weeks. But anyway, so I wanted to start you off in a room where you could essentially just learn that you move around You don't start with a jump. You can't jump, so you're basically stuck in here. You collect these bananas, just like the old rare days. There's no music or anything. You hear some birds chirping. You can see outside a little bit. Oops. Well, this guy tells you to bring him 9 bananas, but I accidentally picked up the 9 bananas already. So anyway, you walk up to him, and you unlock the banana jump. Jump into the air. And it's pretty simple. It's not super complicated. You have a decent amount of air control. If you go back and talk to this guy, he tells you basically to go off and screw yourself. Coding up the dialogue was a pain in the ass because I didn't have time to research what systems to use or anything like that, or if there were any frameworks. So what I did was essentially hard code every single NPC in the game, and that's why there's not that many. The code itself is not that complicated. Essentially, it just fires off a message for every message that you want to display. And when I say message, I mean the observer pattern. So I have the UI subscribed to an event, which is basically display a message. When I come close to this guy, it triggers something that says, hey, anyone who's listening, this guy came up and talked to me, and here's what I want to say. And the UI is like, oh, you want to say this? Okay, I'll display that for you. And then once you walk away, it fires off another event that says, oh, hey, the character walked away. So I could also play sounds or something like that if I wanted to, when I walk away or come close or whatever. Or I can display other things on the UI, or something can happen somewhere else. It's the beauty of the pub sub pattern. Okay, so moving on, I've got the jump unlocked, so I can jump out of here now. And once you jump out, the music actually starts up, which is pretty neat. The actual music itself was grabbed from like Open Game Art or something like that. I don't remember. There are 3 tracks total, and they loop. There's just a trigger right when you jump out. I didn't spend a ton of time looking for the perfect music or anything. Originally, what I wanted this to be was kind of a joke game, and you'll see why. If you haven't played it, you'll see why very shortly. But essentially, you see this NPC right here. You come up and you talk to him, and he tells you that these old apes scattered 4 tokens of their power around the world. And I wanted there to be a little bit of mystery, and because this is about exploration, I wanted there to be unlockable power-ups and stuff like that, like just like the jump that you saw right there. So immediately the first thing that you really see that catches your eye is this monument over here, this kind of jumping section. Not super hard, but when I first implemented the physics and I first released this, which was just like 6 hours ago, but people were complaining that there was not enough friction, so when you would land, you would slide really far, and it sucked. So I changed it. I multiplied the friction by like 4 times. So now you basically clamp down as soon as you hit the ground, which is great. And the camera's not too bad out in the open. It's a lot worse in the houses. But when you do this, you still get this weird camera jitter, which kind of sucks. I'm assuming because I'm teleporting the position of the character, or it's following the head or something like that. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so you've got these bouncers here. A pretty simple platforming section. A moving platform here, pretty simple. It follows between any number of waypoints from A to Z. So if I have 3 waypoints, it'll go from A, B to C, and then back to, I think A, or no, back to B and then A. So they'll, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So we've got more floating platforms here. The trees and the props that you see lying around, I kind of spent 20 minutes randomly placing them as quickly as I could. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, which is why it kind of looks totally random and kind of looks like shit. The clouds, which actually look totally like rocks, which is ridiculous, but I wanted to make like a floating platform. Does not look convincing at all. Whatever. These hoops did not work very well either. But it's actually a cool effect, and I'll show you. If you jump through it and just hold forward, you get launched into the air, kind of like a tunnel. And that part works really well, but what I originally wanted to do was just make 1 hoop, but it just wasn't enough force. I couldn't really nail down the amount of force that was needed to launch you in the right direction. Yeah, so anyway, and I wanted these god tokens, which is what I'm calling them, these big black bananas, to not be here. I didn't want them to just be random rewards from that like super easy puzzle. I wanted them to be really hidden. And if I ever go back and update this, I definitely want to hide them around the world because I think that'll be way cooler. But that's okay. For now, they're just the main objectives and the main rewards of the game. So if I go up to it and touch it, I get a like weirdly demonic, your connection to the gods grow. Or gods grows. And you'll see what happens in about 20 seconds. I wanted to kind of scare the shit out of the player and do some, you know, Cthulhu shit as soon as it shows up here. You see it for only a second, and as your connection to God, the gods grow, the gods will appear to you more and more until eventually you meet the gods. But that's for later. The original vision of the game was to actually make it a big joke, and you've got this like happy tropical music playing, and you're leaping around, and everybody's super happy, and the music's really happy, and sound effects are really upbeat and stuff like that. And then you get these like god tokens, and holy shit, what the fuck is this? There's, you know, there's acid rain, and there's giant monkey figures, and there's screeching and stuff like that. But unfortunately, 3 days is not enough to nail down that tone, at least not with my art abilities. So there was a big problem with the Super Character Collider, or the Super Character Controller, which I used, which is the third-person controller I've mentioned earlier on GitHub. It doesn't do slopes well, or rather it does, but it doesn't handle big meshes. Like this entire island is one mesh. And trying to climb this is totally fine earlier. It used to actually work. Now, as you can see, it's kind of broken. And then you get up here and this kind of happens. And then you get weird things like this where you kind of slide down, and no matter what I press, I can't control anything, which sucks. Earlier, it didn't do that. But when you would fall from any significant distance, which I'll show you up there, you would fall through the ground. So there were serious problems. I found a pull request. I ended up editing the code a bit. So now it doesn't fall through the ground, but it handles slopes a lot worse than it did before. So it's kind of a trade-off. If I come back to this, I'll either replace that or fix it. Anyway, so here's the second area that you're technically supposed to go to. And I didn't want you to be locked to certain areas. But unfortunately, because of the time constraint, I could only complete so much. I definitely wanted to have at least 10 major areas that you could explore, and then a bunch of little minor things with like bananas and stuff like that. But instead, this had to do. So you go up this mountain path. I don't know what's going on with that one. Oh, god damn it. For some reason, it doesn't launch you enough sometimes. Or maybe I just placed that platform too high. But you have to apparently double jump onto it. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't launch you high enough. I'll have to fix that at some point unless you double bounce on it. Anyway, so you get up to here, and then you got a bunch of more hoops again. Whoa. That's another bug with the character controller itself. I can't believe I have to do that again, but I'll skip it in this next part of the video. Or maybe I won't. that is another bug. Sometimes when you go near an edge too far, instead of falling, it will immediately place you onto the ground. I think that would be a relatively easy bug to fix. Some other people were talking about it, but I need to work on that. Again, I didn't have time to fix all these little things, especially with code that's not mine. It's really hard to go in and read someone's 500 line class and try to dismantle it and take apart where it's failing, especially when it's related to like somewhat complicated physics operations. Oh my god, I did it again. And this failing would not be that bad if you just landed on the slope and kind of slid down quickly like it originally used to do. But obviously it doesn't do that anymore, so it's a little bit more frustrating. Okay, come on. So you can see I added some particle effects and stuff like that when you're jumping and when you're running, just to give you an idea of the direction of the velocity that the player is currently traveling in. Okay, hopefully I won't screw this up this time. Okay, I'm gonna land on this again. God, I feel like Alleluia playing this. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to jump this time and not mess it up. There we go. So you land basically on top of the level. What I wanted to do is actually put the banana on top, or the God token is what I call it, on top of one of these mountains and have you scale the entire mountain. But again, due to time constraints, that didn't happen. So you don't actually need all these bananas. You only need 75 to win the game. I was in the middle of implementing the next power-up when I basically ran out of time, which was going to be like 125 bananas or something like that. But anyway, so you grab this one and you get the same message. And you need to go over in that direction. And you used to be able to jump up over this ledge to get over there. But now you can't do that, and you just kind of have to slowly fall down. And you'll see once again, we're going to get that same message as before. Or not same message, same crazy, ridiculous, Lovecraftian style camera change. And that's all it is. It's actually literally just switching out a camera, and that camera has a different culling mask, which all those objects are actually on the scene. Those monkeys, the particle effects, the camera just switches and it changes the culling masks, shows all those layers, as well as has a bunch of different post-processing effects on the camera itself. So anyway, you can go around that side. It doesn't matter. You can go in either direction. I went this way just because I think it might be a little bit faster. This is one of the areas that you're supposed to go in and climb up. Yeah, super useful. Unfortunately, because when you get here, you can't climb up to this brick. And I've actually had 3 people take a screenshot right there and be like, your game's broken, I can't get up there. Which either says that they're not like super smart, or I think I must have designed it poorly. And a lot of people refer to each of these things as like levels, like, oh, I don't know where the hell I'm supposed to go. So I don't know how open world games do it. They give you a lot more guidance, I guess. But I'll have to figure out a way to guide players towards specific things. Maybe a compass feature or something like that. I really don't want to add that, but I'll have to think of something. Maybe more NPCs that are like, oh, I heard this guy over on the other side of the island has this cool thing that he sells or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, you get over to this ruin area, get some more bananas for no purpose, and then you talk to this guy, and originally he tells you, like, bring me 75 bananas and I'll give you something. But anyway, he gives you the double jump. If you talk to him again, he gives you the same line as the other one. There are no other companions, though, unfortunately, again, because I didn't have enough time. Next was going to be, I think, a glide, just like Royd, if you've been watching my other videos. And then I don't know what else. I really wanted to do a roll, kind of like ukulele, where you just kind of start rolling and you get faster and faster. But with this physics engine and the difficulty of making the animation, it was a little bit too hard. Anyway, so we're off to the third puzzle now. This is where things started to really get rushed. This is like the last day, and I'm like, oh crap, I need to finish the game. So I made this like kind of super easy area that you just need to double jump for. So you get another one of these God tokens. And it's set to be 20 seconds after you collect the God token, if you were curious for how the God area shows up or whatever. And it's only lasts as long as the number of God tokens that you actually have. So right now I have 3, so that was 3 seconds. So, okay, I'm going into the final area. This doesn't have to actually be the final area. It can be the second or the last one. But anyway, you need the double jump to actually beat it. As you can tell, this design is probably the worst because it's literally just really repetitive. Also, one thing to note is that this controller actually sticks to walls. I have no idea why. But I'm trying to move away from it, and it's not really happening. Anyway, oh crap. So going to the top of this really poorly designed tower, for some reason it's not lit. Collecting more bananas. And we're finally at the top. And you collect the final God token. And you'll see we're going to the God zone. Unfortunately, again, not enough time to implement like a boss fight with the gods or anything like that. That would have been neat. And that's it. And then it just kind of fades out. Okay, back to the editor. And we're back. So let's talk about a couple of different things. I want to just go over some of the troubles that I had while developing itself. One thing that I was super worried about the entire time I was developing this, let me disable this intro real quick. There we go. Is performance. As you can see, I've got one giant mesh right here, and it's actually this one right here, and one right under it, and then I've got a giant water made by Unity right under it. And surprisingly, that's not that bad in terms of performance. I've got the clip distance for the camera set to super high. As you can see, it's set to 1000 here and 2000 for this one, which I don't know if that has any effect on performance, but it essentially means that it renders super far. But that's actually not that bad, and I was worried about this whole big open world and adding to it and stuff like that, whatever. I have a mid-range computer. I'm running a GTX 970 and an i5 2500K running at like 4.3 gigahertz with 16 gigs of RAM. So when my computer starts slowing down, then I start to get a little bit worried. And I thought it would actually get bad when I placed all these props, these little trees and stuff like that, which I got from a low poly pack from the asset store. It was free, and I just clicked and placed them everywhere all over the island, which is why it looks like shit. If I ever redo this, I'll probably place like a forest somewhere, a little pond or something like that. Anyway, so, and this island actually, I'd be pretty surprised if anyone notices, but it looks exactly like the one from Roid. The only reason it does is because it was generated using the same exact height map as the one from Roid. So it's actually different. If you go back and compare, you'll see a lot of differences. I actually think this one looks better, except for the grass creeping up in places, and I don't know, I might add some snow and stuff to the top. Anyway, So performance was a big concern of mine. And for the most part, actually, like it was not affected. Added a ridiculous amount of geometry, a bunch of mesh colliders, a bunch of these pickups, which I think there's over 200 bananas on this entire level or scene, and a bunch of stuff that was animated, some NPCs, so a bunch of mechanism animations going at once, and performance was actually fine. The one part where performance was suffering a little bit was, where's my player? If I disable this camera and enable this camera, the particle effects in this separate area that are only visible to this camera, and if I hit play, you'll be able to see it. But yeah, you could see this, like the snow coming down. It was actually hail originally, but there's snow coming down, and it's supposed to be ash. And then there's these like red trails, and that's actually pretty expensive. Maybe it's not that one specifically, but the snow might be expensive. I don't know which one actually is. That killed, if we open up the profiler here, you can see the particle system is actually what's taking up an enormous amount of the CPU, or whatever it is, FPS, or has the most impact or something like that. Camera.render is obviously highest too, and that went up the most, I think, when I added all these props. I'll have to look in for how to actually optimize that. I have no idea. Image effects don't take up that much. Culling takes up a ridiculous amount, so I bet if let's see what happens if I enable this camera and disable this one. So if I just remove this camera and enable this one, culling still takes up a large portion of that. Let's see what happens if I turn this down to 100. It seems like it got better, but it's still, it seems like it got a lot better actually. So maybe it is those clipping planes. I'm interested to know if anyone can actually run this on like a lower end computer. They should be able to, because I am getting a constant like 120, 140 FPS or something like that. So it's not bad. Anyway, so I'm going to hit play and stop that and re-enable that other camera so I don't get that annoying film grain effect. So performance was one thing. The second thing was this character controller, which I wrestled with. It was probably about 6 hours of my time spent trying to get the movement and stuff like that feeling right. I originally used the built-in Unity third-person controller, but like I said earlier, it's using like animations to move, and it was just not good. So I switched to the super character controller, which the stuff included with it actually included a state machine for moving around. And the state machine totally works fine, but the super character controller was crap. Basically, the way it works is that every single mesh that you create, you have to add a BSP tree and super collision type to it, classes to it. And this is because it does some sort of calculations at runtime, or maybe it's not at runtime, maybe it's on startup, I'm not actually sure, to generate where collisions need to happen or something like that. I'm not entirely sure exactly how it works. And the super collision type lets you control how much of the slope you can run up and stuff like that, and at which point you start falling. So right now I have it set to 40 degrees. Originally it was like 80 degrees and you could basically walk up the mountain. It kind of sucked. And like I said before, you could actually run up the mountain totally fine and you would fall like you'd expect, and the physics were not terrible. but then there was a bunch of issues around falling through the ground, which completely ruined it. And some weird issues with creases, like right here, it would just kind of bug out a little bit. I fixed it so that it wouldn't fall through, but like you saw earlier, there was this weird bug of you like slowly sliding down slopes without having any control. It sucks. And I definitely have to change it. Anyway, what else? What else? Yeah, I honestly, I wanted to add a whole bunch more areas to this. I wanted some stuff at the peaks of these mountains, and actually the final banana that you needed all the upgrades to get to would be at the very top of a giant tower. I wanted you to go into caves and stuff like that, so a little tunnel would go right here, and then it would load into a different scene, and you'd go into a cave, and there would be stuff at the end of it, or NPCs or something like that. Might add a vendor in the future to sell some minor stuff. But really, if I do continue working on this, the first thing that I'm going to do is improve the physics. Because that's the playability of the game is probably the most important piece. And if you don't have that down, then what's the point, right? And then past that, I'll clean up the look and feel of this island and then start cranking out on getting stuff done. More areas, more stuff to explore, more stuff to unlock. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to actually work on this. I do have to keep on working on Roid. I'm going to do that other game jam in about 2 weeks. I think it's September 5th through the 19th. If anyone's interested in pairing up or teaming up or something like that, especially if you're an artist or something like that, that'd be awesome. Let me know in the comments. Other than that, I will see you guys later.